It was a crisp spring morning in Queensland, Australia in 2005. The sun had just begun to paint the eastern horizon with soft shades of gold and rose, and the waters off the coast shimmered like liquid glass. For Peter Bison, a man in his early 40s, these were the moments he cherished most, a quiet escape from the weight of everyday life. Beside him, his 10-year-old daughter Simone clutched a small backpack, her blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail, eyes wide with anticipation. They had planned this boating trip for weeks, a simple father-daughter outing to explore the coastline, fish a little, and perhaps find a secluded cove where Simone could search for seashells. Peter was meticulous when it came to preparation. Neighbors often joked that he treated his modest motorboat, the Seabreeze, as if it were a luxury yacht. That morning was no different. He checked the fuel, tested the engine, made sure the radio was functional, and packed a cooler with sandwiches, fruit, and bottles of water. A small first aid kit sat neatly under the bench seat. The forecast was perfect. Clear skies, calm waters, and a light breeze. Nothing in the air hinted at the tragedy that would follow. The marina was quiet when they departed just after sunrise. A couple of early fishermen waved as the sea breeze drifted away from the dock, its small motor humming steadily. Simone leaned over the side, trailing her fingers in the water, laughing when tiny fish darted away from her touch. For onlookers, it was a scene of pure serenity. A father and daughter heading into a perfect day on the open water. Peter had mapped out their route carefully. They would head north along the coast, stop near a small island known for its coral reefs, and return by early afternoon. It was a plan he had executed before, one well within his comfort zone. He had grown up near the sea, learning from his own father how to respect and navigate it. There was no reason for concern. As the boat disappeared toward the horizon, the day unfolded normally for those left behind. Hours passed. By noon, no one suspected anything unusual. But when the afternoon waned and the sea breeze had not returned, quiet curiosity turned into worry. Friends at the marina waited, scanning the waterline for any sign of the small vessel. Sunset came and went. The dock lights flickered on, casting long shadows over the water. By then, phone calls had been made. The Coast Guard was alerted. Night fell over Queensland, and the sea, once gentle, grew darker and more mysterious. Search teams began to scour the coastline, their spotlights cutting through the waves. The first night brought no answers, only the hollow echo of engines returning empty-handed. No debris, no distress signal, no sign of Peter or Simone. The sea breeze had simply vanished into the vast, indifferent ocean, leaving behind only questions and the beginning of a mystery that would grip the nation. The search began with urgency and escalated into obsession. At first light, rescue crews swept the glittering expanse in tight grids, calling Peter and Simone's names into the wind as if the sea might answer back. Helicopters pawed at the skyline, their rotors thumping like impatient hearts, while rigid-hulled inflatables combed the channels between reefs and shoals. Volunteers gathered at the marina with thermoses and high-visibility vests, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea breeze had last been seen as a dot sliding toward freedom. No one wanted to name the fear that had arrived with the dark, that a perfect day had unraveled out beyond the heads, quietly, without witness. By the second sunrise, the search pattern widened. The maps on the command table looked like a spiderweb drawn by a trembling hand. Crews radioed in drift data, tide charts, and wind shifts, building a picture of probabilities where facts were thin. A fisherman reported an unusual slick near a sand cay. A helicopter banked and hovered, but found only a shimmering mirage of heat and light. Again and again, hope flared, then flickered, and died. Peter's sister stood by the rail, clutching a photo of Simone in a school uniform, the corners softened by hands. She told anyone who would listen that her brother checked everything twice, that he wouldn't gamble with his daughter's safety. People nodded. The sea kept its counsel. On day 3, a call crackled through the net. a small motorboat low in the water, adrift. Coordinates followed, a string of numbers that pulled every heartbeat taut. When the salvage crew arrived, the scene felt staged by an indifferent playwright. The sea breeze rocked gently, paint scuffed by salt, bow rope whispering against the gunwale. No smoke, no scorch, no sign of a collision. Inside, the cooler still held half-melted ice and a sealed sandwich. The radio worked. The engine turned over on the first try. Life jackets were accounted for, folded with the same neatness Peter was known for. There were no blood stains, no broken latches, no frantic message scratched into fiberglass. It was as though time had pressed pause and the actors had slipped off stage. The boat was towed to shore and examined under harsh bay lights. Mechanics crawled the bilge and traced fuel lines. Investigators dusted for prints and bagged fibers. Divers checked the hull for coral bites or rope burns. Nothing spoke. The only blemishes were the ordinary scrapes of a vessel that loved the coast. Reporters arrived with soft voices and hard cameras, asking the question that echoed from lounge rooms to trawlers. Where were Peter and Simone? Without distress calls, without damage, without bodies, the story warped into something else. A puzzle with all the edges missing. Theories sprouted like mangroves after rain. A sudden squall no one recorded. A rogue wave rising from a glass sea. A fall overboard. A theft gone sideways. A plan carried out with meticulous calm. But the sea breeze offered no loyalty to any version. It just bobbed there, proof of presence, evidence of absence. That night, the marina felt different. Searchlights still raked the water, but chatter softened into murmurs. Some people spoke about currents that could carry a person invisibly along the reef. Others whispered about strangers seen on the breakwater, about deaths and disappearances, about decisions made far from the waterline. In the command tent, the map grew heavier with ink, the web thickening, while a single photograph of father and daughter smiled from a whiteboard. The silence between radio checks became its own character, loud, stubborn, and cold. Somewhere under that silence, answers waited. The question was whether the sea would ever return them. By the fourth day, the official tone shifted. What began as a rescue mission now carried the weight of an investigation. The Sea Breeze had been found in working order, stocked with supplies, and anchored only by the mystery of its missing passengers. Police officers joined the search crews, not to pull survivors from the water, but to sift through possibilities that no one wanted to voice. The marina, once a hive of sympathetic faces, became a stage for scrutiny. Journalists pressed microphones toward neighbors and friends, asking pointed questions. Had Peter seemed troubled? Was he in debt? Had anyone noticed strangers lingering around his boat in recent weeks? Most answers were defensive, tinged with disbelief. Peter was known as steady, dependable, a man who loved the sea but respected it enough not to take risks. And Simone? She was 10, full of life, her laughter as easy as the tide. The idea that either of them had chosen to disappear willingly felt impossible. Still, theories began to take root. Some pointed to sudden, violent weather, though meteorological records showed nothing but calm on that fateful day. Others whispered of freak accidents, a slip on the wet deck, a fall overboard, the current sweeping them away silently while the boat drifted on. But these explanations clashed with the facts. Peter was a strong swimmer, the life jackets were untouched, and the proximity to shore made an unnoticed double accident seem far-fetched. The absence of distress calls further deepened the riddle. Then came the more unsettling speculations. Could someone else have been on the boat? Had a stranger forced their way aboard at sea? No signs of struggle had been found, but investigators knew the ocean could erase evidence as efficiently as it concealed bodies. Rumors bled into local pubs. A shadowy figure seen boarding a similar vessel, a late-night argument overheard near the dock, the possibility of a rendezvous planned far from prying eyes. And then there was the third theory, the one that divided even those closest to the Bisons, that Peter had orchestrated the disappearance. According to this line of thought, he might have been under financial strain, or facing pressures unknown to his friends and family, and had chosen to vanish with his daughter into the wide anonymity of the world. Detectives kept their cards close. They combed through Peter's bank records, phone calls, and emails, looking for hints of preparation, a sudden withdrawal of cash, an unexplained purchase, contact with people outside his usual circle. Simone's school books remained on her desk at home, her homework half finished, a note from her teacher praising her latest essay still pinned to the fridge. It didn't feel like a child preparing to run away. It felt like a child expecting to return home after a day on the water. The longer the absence stretched, the more the case fed on itself. With no physical evidence of violence, no confession, and no witnesses, it became a vessel for the human tendency to fill in the blanks. Every person who had seen the Bisons that morning replayed the memory in their mind. Peter adjusting the throttle, Simone leaning over the rail, the way the boat's white hull caught the sun. These recollections grew heavier, loaded with imagined meanings, until no one could tell where memory ended and speculation began. Search operations scaled back. Patrols still swept the coastline at dawn and dusk, but resources were being redirected. The ocean had offered up the sea breeze intact, but it kept the truth locked beneath its surface. And so, in the small community along Queensland's coast, the story of Peter and Simone shifted from breaking news to a lingering shadow, one that would not fade, because there was nothing to bring closure. Only an open-ended question, drifting like the boat they'd left behind. Weeks passed, and with each tide, the urgency of the search ebbed. What remained was a quieter, more haunting rhythm. Locals telling and retelling the story, each version bending slightly in the retelling. The marina, once alive with the buzz of rescue crews, now sat in uneasy stillness. The sea breeze was stored in a secure police yard, its deck bleached a little more by the sun each day, its silence as impenetrable as the case itself. Families out for weekend sails would glance toward the open water with a mix of longing and fear, as if the ocean had revealed a dangerous appetite they had forgotten it possessed. Peter's home became another focal point of speculation. Detectives walked through its rooms, cataloging details. A stack of unpaid utility bills on the kitchen counter, a fishing calendar marked with weather notes, Simone's bedroom scattered with storybooks and the faint scent of lavender shampoo. There was no sign of hurried departure, no missing luggage, no gaps on the shelves where personal items might have been taken. Yet this only deepened the paradox. If they had not planned to vanish, how had they disappeared so completely? On the edges of the case, strangers emerged with claims of sightings. A woman swore she had seen a man and a young girl boarding a ferry several towns north, the child clutching a red backpack. Another caller reported a pair matching their description at a roadside cafe inland, but security footage revealed only a different father and daughter, their resemblance purely coincidental. Each lead bloomed with hope, and then withered under scrutiny, leaving behind the same barren truth. Nothing concrete, nothing provable. Meanwhile, whispers of darker possibilities circulated quietly. Some suggested Peter had enemies, people with grudges that could have turned violent. Old acquaintances recalled minor disputes over fishing territory or unpaid debts, though nothing that hinted at a motive strong enough for murder. Others speculated about opportunistic crime at sea, smugglers or thieves crossing paths with the sea breeze in the wrong place at the wrong time. But such theories were fragile. Without evidence, they dissolved like footprints in the tide. In town, the absence of resolution began to take on its own shape. It wasn't just a story anymore, it was a presence. Simone's classmates left an empty desk in the corner of the classroom untouched, her pencil case still inside, as if she might walk in one morning and pick up where she left off. At the local grocery store, Peter's account remained open, unpaid but not closed. a silent testament to the belief that he might yet return. The press, sensing the shift from breaking news to enduring mystery, crafted features that painted the Bisons as characters in a maritime ghost story. Headlines leaned into the chilling paradox: a perfectly seaworthy boat, a perfect day, 2 lives gone without a ripple. Talk shows debated the case, each guest proposing their own theory, but no one could move the story forward. The facts remained frozen, while the possibilities multiplied endlessly. By the end of the first month, the official line was blunt. Without new evidence, the investigation would remain open but inactive. The ocean had been searched, the land combed, the leads chased. What remained was uncertainty, a hollow space into which both grief and imagination could pour freely. And so the shoreline of Queensland held its breath, the waves washing over the sand as if erasing and rewriting the same unanswered question: what happened to Peter and Simone Bison? As the weeks turned to months, the mystery of Peter and Simone's disappearance began to take on a life of its own. What had once been a local tragedy now rippled through Australia's coastal communities, drawing in amateur sleuths, online forums, and late-night radio hosts who thrived on unanswered questions. Theories, some grounded, others bizarre, circulated like contraband in whispered exchanges and glowing comment threads. The most straightforward idea was the rogue accident. Supporters of this theory imagined Peter and Simone fishing on the deck, perhaps distracted by a sudden splash or a snagged line. One slip, one desperate reach, and both could have ended in the water, the current claiming them silently while the sea breeze drifted. But this explanation felt too neat, too convenient. Experienced mariners noted that Peter would have cut the engine, thrown a life ring, or at least left evidence of a scramble. None of that existed. The foul play at sea theory had a darker allure. Could another vessel have intercepted them? Smugglers, pirates, or even someone with a personal vendetta? The trouble was, the waters that day had been unusually calm and sparsely trafficked. No radar hits, no witnesses, no sign of struggle aboard. And yet, the absence of evidence didn't rule it out. The ocean was a master at swallowing secrets whole. Then came the most controversial theory: a planned disappearance. Perhaps Peter had decided to escape his life entirely, taking Simone with him to start anew under different names. Advocates of this idea pointed to his recent unpaid bills and an unconfirmed rumor that he had been researching remote coastal towns in Indonesia. But when police scoured his finances, they found no large withdrawals, no forged documents, no ticket purchases. The logistics of vanishing so cleanly, especially with a child, seemed almost impossible without a support network, something no one could prove he had. In the absence of new facts, these narratives competed for dominance, each one finding believers. For the families involved, the speculation was a double-edged sword, keeping the case alive in the public's mind, but also distorting the memory of the people at its heart. Friends of Peter bristled at the suggestion he'd abandon his home. Simone's mother, who lived in another state, clung to the belief that her daughter had been taken against her will and was still alive somewhere. Police, wary of public obsession turning into harassment, released carefully worded statements. They acknowledged every tip, however far-fetched, but privately admitted that the trail had gone cold. The sea breeze itself was returned to Peter's relatives, though few wanted to take it out on the water. It became less a vessel and more a relic, a reminder of a journey that began in sunlight and ended in shadow. Months after the disappearance, on an overcast afternoon, a fisherman claimed to have hooked something heavy just beyond the reef. For a moment, hope flared that the sea might finally yield an answer. But when the line surfaced, it carried only a tangle of seaweed and driftwood. Still, the story made the rounds, another small wave in a tide of rumors. In the end, the theories remained exactly that, possibilities suspended in the deep. And with each passing day, the water that had once been so familiar to Peter and Simone felt more like a living thing, silent, watchful, and unwilling to give back what it had taken. By the first anniversary of their disappearance, the story of Peter and Simone Bison had crossed from active investigation into the realm of legend. In Queensland's coastal towns, their names were spoken with a kind of reverence, as if mentioning them too loudly might disturb the fragile balance between truth and myth. The marina where they had last been seen was unchanged. Boats still rocked gently in the tide, gulls still wheeled overhead. But to those who remembered that morning in 2005, the air seemed heavier. The sea breeze was gone from its berth, replaced by other vessels, yet its absence was as noticeable as an empty chair at a dinner table. Commemorations were small and quiet. A few friends gathered near the shore with candles, their flames trembling in the wind. They set flowers adrift on the water, watching them float away toward the horizon where father and daughter had vanished. Some prayed. Others simply stared, as if hoping the sea might answer back. The police presence was minimal, just a pair of officers observing from a distance, their expressions betraying nothing. Officially, the case remained open. Unofficially, the file gathered dust in a drawer marked unsolved. That didn't mean the story was dormant. Every few months a new tip would arrive. An unverified sighting in Darwin, a blurry photograph taken in a Malaysian market, a fisherman's claim that he had found a girl's shoe tangled in his net. None of these leads survived close examination, but each one was enough to reignite whispers and draw the case briefly back into public consciousness. The unpredictability of the reports gave the disappearance an almost supernatural aura, as if Peter and Simone were caught between worlds, able to be glimpsed but never reached. The most enduring image from the case was not of the missing themselves, but of the sea breeze, a boat adrift, unscarred, stocked with supplies, the engine running as if waiting for its passengers to return. It became a symbol of unanswered questions, appearing in documentaries, podcasts, and even local artwork. For many it was the ultimate maritime ghost, not a wreck at the bottom of the ocean, but a vessel returned intact, stripped only of the lives it carried. Some locals began to speak of the ocean around Queensland as hungry water. It was an old term, revived from fishing folklore, used to describe stretches of sea that seemed to claim more than their share of lives. Rational minds dismissed it as coincidence, but to those who had lost someone to the waves, the idea carried weight. The bison disappearance only deepened the superstition. As the years slipped by, the lack of closure became its own kind of cruelty. Simone's friends grew up, graduated, and left for cities inland. Peter's relatives, once vocal in their calls for renewed searches, spoke less and less to reporters. Grief had calcified into silence. What was left was a story retold in fragments. A clear morning, a father and daughter smiling at the dock, a boat that came back alone. And beneath it all, the sea kept moving, tides rising and falling, storms coming and going, oblivious to the mystery it held in its depths. Whether the truth lay on the ocean floor, in some hidden cove, or in the shadows of human choice, one fact remained unshaken. The sea had taken Peter and Simone Bison, and it had no intention of giving them back. 10 years after Peter and Simone Bison vanished, the story still lingered like salt in the air. For newcomers to the Queensland coast, it was a tale told in hushed tones over beers at the Marina Bar, or in the quiet moments before a fishing trip set out at dawn. For those who had been there in 2005, it was not just a story. It was a scar. The image of that white-hulled sea breeze drifting empty had etched itself into the local memory, refusing to fade with the tide. The anniversary brought journalists back to the shore, their cameras capturing the same weathered piers and the same glittering horizon. Interviews followed a familiar rhythm. Neighbors describing Peter as reliable, devoted to his daughter. Former classmates of Simone recalling her as bright, curious, quick to laugh. And always the same conclusion. None of it made sense. The sheer absence of evidence made the case a black hole into which every theory eventually collapsed. In the years since, technology had advanced. Search methods that had been unavailable in 2005 were now standard. Drones capable of sweeping vast stretches of coastline, sonar mapping that could scan the seabed with uncanny precision. Yet even with these tools, nothing new emerged. The ocean floor revealed only the bones of forgotten shipwrecks, the detritus of storms, and the slow-moving shadows of marine life. If Peter and Simone were out there, the sea was keeping them hidden. Online, the case had found new life. True crime forums dissected every detail, some users claiming to have insider knowledge, others spinning elaborate reconstructions based on tide charts and engine logs. A small but persistent group argued that the answer lay not in the water, but on land, that someone in the community knew more than they had ever admitted. A few even suggested that the sea breeze itself had been staged, planted adrift to mislead investigators. These theories, however far-fetched, kept the disappearance alive in the digital realm. Meanwhile, the human cost endured quietly. Simone's mother, now in her 50s, gave one rare interview in which she admitted she still kept her daughter's bedroom exactly as it had been. "I don't know if she's alive," she said, her voice trembling. "But if she is, I want her to know she still has a place here." Her words were replayed on television, cutting through the fog of speculation, to remind viewers that at the heart of the mystery was not just a puzzle, but two lives stolen from their families. In town, the sea breeze became an odd kind of pilgrimage site after its eventual return to Peter's relatives. It was no longer seaworthy, its engines seized, its hull faded, but people still came to see it, to stand on the dock and imagine the moment it had been found, perfectly intact, yet utterly abandoned. Some touched its rails like a relic, as though hoping to feel the echo of the day it left the marina with two people who would never come back. A decade had passed, but the disappearance of the bisons remained as deep and cold as the waters beyond Queensland. Time had not solved it. Time had only taught the town how to live with the not knowing. And for those who had known Peter and Simone, that was the hardest part of all. Not the idea that they were gone, but that no one could ever say why. 20 years after that bright April morning in 2005, the story of Peter and Simone Bison had become more than a local legend. It was now woven into Australia's catalogue of maritime mysteries. The marina where they last departed looked much the same, its weathered posts wrapped in barnacles, its wooden planks creaking under the weight of new generations of fishermen and sailors. Yet for the older residents, every outgoing boat still carried a shadow of that day, an unspoken reminder that not every journey ends where you expect. The case file remained open, but its pages were brittle with age. The photographs, Peter at the helm, Simone clutching her backpack, were fading, the colors bleeding into one another like watercolors left in the rain. Detectives who had once worked the case had retired, their notes passed down to younger officers who approached the file like an inherited riddle. Theories had hardened into folklore. The freak accident, the midnight interception, the deliberate escape. None could be proven, and each was as likely as the next. On certain anniversaries, the sea itself seemed to play along with the story, laying down a mirror-smooth surface under skies so blue they looked endless. It was on one such day that a group of amateur divers, exploring a reef far beyond the usual fishing grounds, surfaced with a fragment of weathered fiberglass. At first hope flared. Was it part of the sea breeze that had gone unnoticed? But analysis showed it belonged to another vessel entirely, lost decades earlier. The sea had once again offered an almost answer, only to snatch it away. For the families, the years had done little to dull the ache. Simone's mother, now gray-haired, still kept her daughter's room untouched, the bed neatly made, a small seashell collection on the windowsill catching the afternoon light. Peter's sister, who once paced the marina night after night in the days following the disappearance, spoke less often about it now. Not because she had found peace, but because the words no longer came easily. The loss had become a silent companion. In town, a small plaque was eventually mounted on a bench overlooking the bay. It read simply, "In memory of Peter and Simone Bison. Lost to the sea, but never forgotten." Tourists sometimes paused to read it, unaware of the full story, and locals would quietly fill in the blanks for them. The bench became a place where people sat to watch the horizon. The same horizon the sea breeze had sailed toward, never to return. And still, the mystery endured. The ocean off Queensland had taken many lives over the centuries, but few stories resonated like this one. Perhaps it was the intact boat, found without a mark. Perhaps it was the innocence of a father-daughter trip, turned into a vanishing act. Or perhaps it was the way the case refused to give up a single definitive truth, leaving only possibilities. On calm days, when the water lay flat and the sky was wide, some swore they could see a small boat in the distance, a flicker of white against the blue, only for it to dissolve as they blinked. Whether it was a trick of light or something else, no one could say. But in a place where the sea holds its secrets, the line between memory and reality is as thin as the horizon itself. And so the story of Peter and Simone Bison drifts on, untethered, unanswered, forever vanishing into the place where the ocean meets the sky.